I want to welcome everyone to today's X-Space meeting, which is the second phase of the series, Defining the Change We Seek and Distilling How to Achieve It. I'm back to share my thoughts on the recent protests and developments in Nigeria. As a concerned Nigerian, I want to offer my perspective on the outcome of the protest and the people's demand to the government and the way forward. While I understand the anger and frustration that led to the protest, I believe we should have taken a different approach. Now that we've seen the power of collective action, it's time to regroup and we strategize. That's why we are here. But before then, here are 5 steps I propose we take. After listening to this step, we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of this conversation. The 5 steps include: 1, engaging in internal dialogue. We need to educate ourselves about the issues and how to address them through debates and discussions. We can merge different perspectives and arrive at a clear understanding of the problem. Number 2, hold conferences. These gatherings will help consolidate our vision for change and educate the uninformed. As we engage in debates and conferences, we will eradicate ignorance and gain a deeper understanding of the issue. Number 3, define the problem and solution. Through our internal dialogue, we will identify the root causes of our challenges and develop practical steps to address them. This will empower us to hold our leaders accountable. 4, present a unified proposal to the government. Once we have a clear understanding of the issues and solutions, we will draft a concise proposal outlining our vision for Nigeria. This will ensure the government understands our demands and can't claim ignorance. 5, which is the last one, apply pressure with informed demands. If the government refuses to implement our proposed solution, we will be armed with the knowledge and unity to apply targeted pressure, demanding action or resignation. By following these steps that I just listed, we will be well equipped to drive meaningful change in Nigeria. Having said that, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of this conversation, which is defining the change we seek and distilling the strategy to achieve it. And I will be inviting no other person than Tony Nadi, who is a legal practitioner with specialty in jurisprudence, which is constitution making. He is the spokesperson of NINAS. He's here with us. He and NINAS as a group have been on this subject matter we want to discuss today for the past 25 years. I can say that what he and his team saw about issues with Nigeria in the last 25 years, many Nigerians are only seeing it today. Sir, you are welcome to today's space session. We thank you and your team for honoring our invitation once again. Welcome, sir. You have the floor, sir. I need the mic.
Oh, okay. All right. I see the signal just came now. Can you hear me?
Very clearly, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And welcome everybody once more. We've asked everybody to come back today to this second edition of the town hall so that we can look at what has happened since after the first town hall on all fronts, and also what we need to do differently in going back to the drawing board so that we can get a different outcome with a different set of actions. It is in that light we go back to the title, the theme of the town hall, defining the change we seek. and distilling the how for achieving it. Now, we begin with the protest and how it ended. We recall that our last meeting was July 27th, 2024, 3-4 days before the commencement of the protest. We had tried to get those who were preparing for the protest to realize and understand that the nature of the problem they're trying to solve is one in which, like a tap from which many evils are flowing. Every single thing that the protesters listed as what they wanted changed was coming from the Constitution of Nigeria. Whether it was the corruption that has eaten the place dry, or the fair subsidy that was withdrawn, or the impunity they see, or the poverty and hunger that they live with, or the insecurity ravaging everywhere, all those things are flowing from the wrong constitutional arrangements of Nigeria. Every one of them. And so, if you wanted an end to those things, your demands must be framed in knowledge of that reality. Because if you do not frame it as such, you are going to have problems, because the system will stand on that constitution that empowers them to do all kinds of things, including killing protesters without consequence, because they're going to be talking about law and order and all kinds of nonsense. But if that protest, if the organizers had listened a little more, all they needed to do was to say, we are living in hunger, in insecurity. We see impunity, we see corruption all over the place. And we've identified where it's coming from. It is that constitution. We are discussing fuel subsidy today because we don't have petroleum products. And therefore we have to import. It is that constitution in its exclusive list that locked down the refining capacity that could have been available. And so, back to the constitution, as a cause of the non-availability of petroleum products. As long as that constitution is standing there, there's no availability of petroleum product that you find, different from what you have had across the last 30-40 years. Since the 1979 inclusion of that item on the exclusive list. And so instead of discussing subsidy, you go to the source of the problem. What is petroleum refining or refineries doing on the exclusive list of Nigerian Constitution? Because it is on account of that exclusivity that it becomes the sole business of the federal government, the exclusive business of the federal government to refine petrol for the crude oil for all of us. We have seen what they've done with that exclusive prerogative. 4 refineries, none of them had produced any liter of fuel across the last several years. The solution to that problem is to insist that the Constitution of Nigeria should not lock down the refining capacity. If that Constitution goes down today, there are thousands of companies that have the capacity to build refineries. It may not be very big refineries, but there will be people who are prepared to buy the crude oil of Nigeria, or whoever is selling it, and refine. And so, it is in that inordinate ambition to control everything and own everything that the soldiers of fortune, the military, the caliphate wing, the military wing of the caliphate that wanted to own everything that is found in Nigeria, loaded 68 items into the exclusive list. Every one thing on that list is responsible for one misery or the other. The same thing with electricity. There's nothing that will bring electricity to you where you are, in Port Harcourt, in Abeokuta, in Ibadan, except that consumption goes down. They can deceive those who do not know. But we who know that it is the inclusion on that exclusive list of the electricity generation and transmission that brought us to where a country of 230 million people that will ordinarily require no less than 250,000 megawatts of electricity is still discussing 3,000 and 4,000 with a transmission a grid that cannot carry even all of it. So Nigeria is not even on the road to 10,000 megawatts of electricity that will be distributed to consumer uninhibited. That will tell you how far back, how backward, how retarded our development has been. And what development can you have without electricity? And so the industries, the manufacturing, the giant manufacturing companies that have had to leave Nigeria, not to talk about the smaller ones that are living in hundreds. It is mostly because of electricity. And so, on the eve of Buhari's departure from power, they say, we have amended to now allow the states to generate and transmit in the areas not covered by the national grid. Do you know what that means? That amendment covers for areas not covered by national grid. That is that's the small room the states can have to generate. Why will we have to wait for people who do not wish us well to be the ones determining whether we have electricity or we don't? And even if you come to where you say, okay, let me even do let me use that little window to generate. The gas you require, if you want to generate on turbine, the gas you require is still on that exclusive list. The power plant in Aba, the one that Baton Naji built, apparently not knowing how far the constitution, ties up everything. That plant had been built for almost 10 years. But the Abuja will not allow gas that is less than 10 minutes. I know the place. In Aloji, in the period the express road from Enugu to Port Harcourt was built, when the road was still in very good condition, we were in college. From the place, that power plant of Baton Naji, the geometric power plant you hear about, from where it is sitting to where the gas that was intended by the owners of the plant to be used to generate electricity, a place called Owaza oil field in Abia, less than 10 minutes if that express road was in the condition it was when it was first built. Less than 10 minutes drive. But why will it take 10 years to lobby and beg and go to Katsina and go to Kaduna and go to Kano to have Nigeria allow the owners of the gas to take a bit of gas to power the Aba that have been in darkness for so many years? Since they shut down Oji River power plant that runs on coal, the rest of the world still running on coal. The US running on coal, China running on coal. South Africa, majority, South Africa that has a 60,000 megawatts. Imagine South Africa that is 1/3 of our size is having 60,000 megawatts of electricity, most of it from coal. And we have coal. The only reason we don't have electricity, especially in the part that had that coal, because there was an OG River power plant that generated the electricity by which Eastern region, kickstarted this development that became global example under Premier M.I. Okpara. It was the electricity from OG River that was used to build Port Harcourt and Calabar, and Enugu and Aba and all the other places. Trans-Amadi Industrial Layout in Port Harcourt was built with electricity from OG River. From the time in 1979 that Nigeria put electricity on the exclusive list, it became the business of people in the federal government to decide whether or not you have electricity, and therefore they shut down that OG River power plant. Aba went dead. Onitsha went dead. Nnewi went dead, and we all moved over to generator. How much power can generator, give you? At what cost? How can you compete in anything? And there are lawyers in Nigeria, thousands and thousands and thousands of lawyers loafing around, unable to open their eyes to see that it falls on them to explain to the rest of the people that we cannot continue in this madness of locking ourselves down into 68 places. That is for electricity. Then you come to security. We are talking about the issues that led to the protests. You talk about the electricity. Security. Look at the security situation in the country. Soludo's daughter is wedding in Abuja today. A commissioner from Anambra that had to go to join him in Abuja for that wedding because there was nowhere in Anambra they could find sufficient security to have a wedding on a Saturday. Today, August 17. A commissioner in his cabinet, traveling with his wife to go to Abuja to attend wedding today, was kidnapped somewhere in Kogi yesterday. As we speak, that commissioner is still in captivity of the kidnappers. The aide that traveled with that commissioner was killed at the point of kidnap. That is the kind of security. Why are they in Abuja to hold a wedding? Because of lack of security. As it is in Anambra, so it is all over the country. People are being slaughtered all over the Middle Belt because of security. How did we come to that level of insecurity? That same constitution on the exclusive list, item 2 on that exclusive list, arms and ammunition, exclusive business of federal government, police on that exclusive list, army and the rest of the armed forces on that exclusive list. And therefore, it is only Abuja that can decide the kind of security you will have. And so if they go to bring people they captured from the war front in the northeast, Boko Haram fighters, whom they say have repented, they put them in the police, they put them in the army. You saw some of them during the protest. And then they send them to you. That's all the security you get. Tell me who can plan your security better than you that know your land, your forest, that know your language so they can get intelligence. And so, security is not improving 1 inch. All this stupid talk about state police. What is the meaning of state police? How did we come about the states? You took the economic assets of the regions, fractured the regions into 12 states, that soon became 36 states. All the economic assets of the regions belong to that illicit federal government that emerged since 1966. And particularly from the point in 1967 that the regions were fractured into 12 states by Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon. He's still alive. I'm sure he can see that Nigeria that they built on the blood of the innocent. How it's working for him and his Biram people. How it's working for the rest of the Middle Belt and the rest of the country. It is the inclusion of security, arms and ammunition, police on that exclusive list that is the reason the insecurity we see in Nigeria is growing in leaps and bounds. There is nothing that is going to change that except that constitution goes down. You can see we have talked about electricity. We've talked about security. We've talked about corruption that is provided for. That constitution creates massive avenues for corruption and comprehensively protects the potential beneficiaries of grand corruption. What do I mean? Section 6C of that constitution absolves the government of responsibility towards the citizen. All these people who are going about to say, government owes you this and that, security and welfare, owes you equal treatment, and all kinds of school and hospital. Under the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, government does not owe you any obligation at all. It's in black and white. Any lawyer in Nigeria that tells you otherwise, tell him that Tony Nadi says is a criminal. Because there's a whole chapter by which Nigeria encapsulates all of what it will be doing for the citizen, welfare and security and all the equal treatment, non-discrimination. That entire chapter 2 is nullified by section 6C of that constitution. The reason we are breaking it down like this, we are giving you specific references, specific things you can go and research even as we speak on your telephone. Ask any lawyer you know, whether he's senior advocate or junior advocate. So we are talking to the people who are choking in Nigeria, who are complaining about hunger, who are complaining about fuel subsidy and all of the calamity it has imposed on them personally, who are complaining about the insecurity that has eaten up everywhere, who are complaining about the hopelessness, the decayed infrastructure and everything. We are showing you the constitutional provisions directly responsible for those things happening to you where you are, and that nothing is going to change except that constitution goes down. For every day we keep that constitution, no less than 5,000 people die. No less than 5,000 people die. If they don't die from insecurity, they will die from accidents on the road that are not built. Or they will die from hunger or poverty in which they can't treat malaria. Or the women that go to give birth will die because there's no facility. Or their businesses will collapse. Or the naira they rely on will lose value. You had 10 million in the bank that would be basis of living fairly well. Today it cannot fetch anything for you. Just because of that constitution. And so we come down to that matter of the spare key to the treasury handed to the president by section 81, 82 of the constitution, handed to the governors by sections 121, 122. And the section 308 that gives them immunity. In all the 8 years they will be in office, you have no recourse against them. They can take all the money in the treasury. And as they are leaving office, the people they put in place to replace them are people who cannot probe them, people who go to prison themselves if they are probed. Go and find out who and who will go to prison if Buhari is probed today. Go and find out the ownership structure of that refining company in Malta and see who is president today. Go and find out who was your governor in the last three, in the last 3 cycles. It's always the person that will go to prison with them. Let's take Lagos for instance. The chief of staff, Fashola, replaced Tinubu. The next person that came after Fashola was accountant in that government. The one that is there now, go and find out what he was doing across the last, all these years. So these are people, you go to Delta, you find out who was secretary of the government that became governor. You go to Rivers, find out where Wike was and where our friend there now was in all the years of being governor. So these are things that these determined brigands have chosen to impose on us. And that is for corruption right there. So you see the source of the corruption and the source of the impunity, because immunity provisions, immunity engenders the impunity we see. The immunity in section 308 is reason none of your governors is sitting in prison. None of your past presidents is being questioned. And that immunity does not end with Section 308. There's even one that is far worse. It is in Section 6, subsection 6D of that Constitution. We are being specific now to tell those who are complaining about all kinds of things in Nigeria where the problems are flowing from. It is that Constitution. The impunity you see from the characters that seized power with a barrel of gun, including the one that is having his birthday today in Mina. They put a provision in Section 6, subsection 6D of your Constitution, granting themselves 33 years of immunity from any kind of probe. In fact, they removed the jurisdiction of the courts for everything they did in the name of government. From the 15th of January 1966, that is the day they toppled the Constitution of Nigeria, to the 29th of May in 1999, the day they pretended they had returned to democracy. But with the Constitution they imposed in 1979. So we have not moved anywhere from where we were from January of 1966. They granted themselves absolute immunity from any kind of questioning. That is, you can't even raise the issue of whatever they did. So whether they murdered 3.5 million people like they did in the East, or they killed their commander-in-chief, a lieutenant colonel, taking over as commander-in-chief from a general that did nothing, that was not part of anything that became the coup. In that period, they imposed the land use decree by which they took all the lands in Nigeria, all the choice lands in Nigeria for themselves. Go and find out the title deed behind Otta Farm. Go and find out the title deed behind the big farms you see in Adamawa and all kinds of places, Delta. These people took all the choice lands. Go to GRA in Port Harcourt. Go and buy any property. When you are buying property, you will research the what they call the root of title. Oh, you are buying from Mr. X. Before he became his, he bought from Mr. Y. Before Mr. Y bought, there may have been 3-4 buyers and sellers before you now come to buy in 2024. When you trace the root of title, you are going to find the one who took that land under the land use decree that they imposed in 1978. In that is covered by that period of immunity. 33 years. And so whether they took all your assets, it was in that period that they shared out the oil and gas assets as a oil block to the ones who committed the genocide against the peoples of eastern Nigeria. You may think it's Igbo that they killed. You may think it's Igbo only that they killed. But if you go there today, you will see the evidence of what they had to do to become the new owners of the 3 million barrels of crude oil Nigeria had to sell every day. They had to kill the owners and impose a constitution that put it in black and white that it now belongs to them. So oil and gas is on the exclusive list of that constitution. The Ijaw that is crying for oil, for their resource and control of it. All of those who had ever gone to wage any kind of war for resource control, no part of that resource is coming back to you as long as that constitution is standing, because your oil and gas is on that exclusive list. It belongs to the federal government. And who is the federal government? In a situation where our federation collapsed since 1966, July 1966, the day they declared Araba. And then it was buried on the 27th of May, the day they divided they fractured those 4 regions into 12 states. So Nigeria ceased to be, the Federation of Nigeria died and was buried. Yes, there's the country called Nigeria. The land is not yet carried away by Atlantic Ocean, thank goodness. But the federation is a union of people that could have been countries of their own. And so, if we do not have a federation, on what basis do we now have a federal government that sits in Abuja controlling 68 aspects of our lives, controlling, being the owners of all our economic assets, whether you talk about oil and gas or the ports or the solid minerals, everything that represents economic, means of production. And then the power to even work those things, all taken away. You can't refine, even if you are prepared to buy your own crude. They seize the product and hand over to a Fulani man called Dangote. They seize the right for refining, so that even if I want to buy the crude oil that is taken from my land, I am not authorized to buy and refine because the Constitution forbids me and they are not prepared to license me. Look at the mess that has happened with the aircraft that they are seizing now. How did we come about that? Exclusive list. Ogun State enters into a contract with a Chinese company called Zhongshan Fucheng for exclusive economic free zone kind of thing. Item 36. For those who will be singing their ignorance on national TV about what is going on, starting with the spokesman of the president. Item 36. Item 36 on that exclusive list of 68 is on maritime and ports and all the things that have to do with a point of exit to international arena. So this, by implication, the free zones you see, like One, all fall under that exclusive list. And so, Ogun State that wanted to deal with China cannot finish that transaction without the federal government signing in one corner, because the power to deal with that subject matter is exclusive to the federal government. And so, it is under the guarantee of the federal government, under the license of federal government, that Ogun State entered into that transaction at all. And so, the federal government remains the standing guarantor in the background, so that if Ogun State does anything wrong, China or whichever company suffered will be at liberty to go after the guarantor, the federal government. It is that exclusive list that landed Nigeria where it is now, because Ogun State recklessly, one governor left, the other one came, Amoshu came and began to do, canceled the contract, and then they went to court, and then we have $74 million that they have to recover. But because of that exclusive list, it is the federal government of Nigeria, for those who, the ignoramuses that are running their mouth from the presidency and everywhere else. It is on account of the standing of the federal government in that contract. It is the exclusive list that makes it the business of federal government. So all these things that the state governors are doing overseas, borrowing money from here and there, the federal government always has to sign, because that item, whatever they have to do with the international sector, let's say whatever they have to do with the outside world, is on that exclusive list. If you go to set up an electricity plant today, the same way you have to, the federal government, since the matter is on the exclusive list, no foreign investor, that is why no foreign investor has come to this date. On all the things the government of Nigeria and the state governors have been jumping all over the world to say they are bringing investors, they're going to woo investor. Which investor in his right mind will come and invest in the burning house of Lugard, where security is constitutionally rendered impossible, where infrastructure is constitutionally rendered impossible? And then, if you go to anything you do, it is the federal government that will sign off on it. They can cancel out on you anytime if you are not in favor anymore. And so, in all of what has gone wrong, why things are upside down in Nigeria, every one of them is coming from that constitution. And so, those who are now living in hunger, how did you come about hunger? The farmers that will have been producing the food are charged out of their farms by the insecurity imposed on you by that constitution. Because if that arms and ammunition is not on that exclusive list, We will secure our places. Our farmers will not have to fear to go to farm because we will have security in our various locations across the country. But how come we found ourselves in a situation where the Buhari that was bringing his Fulani people to overrun everybody and take the land for themselves is commander-in-chief that has to now protect you? And so Boko Haram is running wild there, Fulani Hesme is running wild here, and everybody, they now call it bandit. And the media people join them in calling it bandit. Terror. Plain terror. And so everything is flowing from that constitution. No remedy is coming, no matter who becomes president. Let those who know where to find Peter Obi go and tell him, get him to listen to this when the replay comes. That everything he says, even leadership, the great leadership Peter Obi and Patu Tomi will provide the whole world, is rendered impossible by that constitution. What do I mean? Elections into federal and state offices are on that exclusive list, meaning that it is INEC that will conduct the election. Meaning that it is in Abuja that they will have to decide everything. We have seen INEC at work. And so, no matter how you try, you saw that Peter Obi won the election, that is without doubt at all. But is he president today? No. Why? Because INEC. Why INEC? Exclusive list. As it is for the presidency, so it is for the governorship. You cannot become governor of your state if Abuja does not approve of you. If the caliphate that controls that INEC in Abuja is not in approval of you. Look at Imo State. How did they come about the hope in the place? And now we're talking about renewed hope that has turned a nightmare. And so, even in your state house of assembly, because it is election into federal and state that is written in that exclusive list, your state house of assembly, all those members you think you are the one who elected, or your governor, you think you are the one who elected. No, they process the people they don't want out of the way. All the people who will have been doing great things in your various locations, representing you or governing you, are screened out. So they look for the willing tools, the ones that are willing to do their bidding, the ones that are criminals, that are willing to do, that they have, some kind of blackmail on to coronate them. And so they can't do anything outside what Abuja dictates. That is the matter of leadership. They have now brought it further down to local government. In which INEC will now be conducting election into your local government. I'm sorry for the people who are standing by, because by the time INEC, the caliphate controlled INEC, begin to conduct election into your local government, it is whoever they declare winner that will be the winner. All those Fulani people they deposited in your backyard here and there, all those people selling suya, who have been given birth, they bear Igbo name, they bear Yoruba name like you. But the Fulani know their own. When INEC begin to conduct election, whoever they say is the chairman will be the chairman. Your traditional rulers that have to, their stipend, their monthly allowance is 5% of whatever goes to local government. All those royal highnesses you see, that 5% is a lot of money, because some of the local governments get 200-300 million every month. Some of the paramount rulers have 2-3 local governments under their domain. And so that will tell you it is where that 5% is that the allegiance of your council, of your traditional rulers will be. And your land that is usually under their management. Of course, between them and council chairman, who also now goes to Abuja to collect directly, their allegiance is no longer with you. In a federation, what are local government areas doing on the constitution in the first place? It was by decree that the 774 local government areas were smuggled into the constitution, and we now have 812 governments that we must finance every month. For those who are thinking about how did Nigeria become the poverty capital of the world, we are financing 812 governments with thousands of bureaucracies attached to them, such that all the money that Nigeria earns today is no longer enough to pay for that bureaucracy. And look at the humongous figures that the criminals that sit in your hallowed chambers in Abuja take for themselves. You can see the altercations. It could be anything between, if you even take the minimum for senators, if you take that minimum of 21,488,000 every month, you now add to it, here in this last budget, they took 500 million per senator for their constituency projects. That is, take this 500, whatever you think your people need, go and do. So they don't get to do. The ones in the House of Representatives took an average of 250, 300 million. Some of them more. When you add that to the Christmas bonus and the palliative of 160 million per vehicle, there are all kinds of things they take from time to time. None of them, when you bring them all together, none of them goes on with less than 50, 60 million a month on the average. That's the kind of money they take. And look at their numbers. 109 senators, 360 members of House of Representatives, 48 ministries, and all kinds of MDAs. Nigeria is now borrowing because they don't owe the citizens any obligation. All the money that comes is for them to share in that large number. We had only 5 governments at the time Nigeria was working for everybody. At the time Nigeria was a federation. It was the 4 regional governments and the 1 federal government, trim. And so Emma Obara was performing the miracle in the East. Eastern Nigeria was reckoned as the fastest growing economy of the developing world of the time. These Asian tigers came to copy from Eastern Nigeria of Emma Obara. We all saw what Awolowo did in Western region, still being referenced. Ahmadu Bello was struggling. Whatever the other people did, he tried to do. And so they were all in healthy rivalry until the darkness came in the mid-60s. And so what we're saying today is that Nigeria will go up in smoke in terms of collapsing. The people who are crying about hunger, you see, we have told you how the food that should have come to you is prevented by insecurity. Insecurity imposed by that constitution. We have also told you how your naira that should have been buying more, because these people are borrowing from the IMF and having to devalue because they have to finance this 812 government that we can do without. If that constitution goes down today, the cost of governance will go all the way down to less than 10% of what it is today. All the way down to less than 10% of what it is today. And the 90% and more will be freed to become part of what will go to citizens, welfare and security. As long as that constitution is standing, the cost of governance will only continue to grow, and the criminals who are managing Nigeria under the fraudulent constitution of Nigeria will continue to borrow money to share among themselves. Amortizing into 40, they've borrowed 40 years into your future. And they're not doing anything with that money that will improve anything for you today. That is just to tell the protesters and all of those who are angry about one thing or the other. So your hunger is coming from the fact that the farmers cannot produce. The little that is available, the currency is devalued because those who are governing you under this constitution constantly have to borrow. The crude oil you think is there, being produced, our oil. Things have gone so bad on account of that exclusive list. Buhari was oil minister. Tinubu is oil minister today. You were hearing about crude oil theft. Nobody can steal one barrel of crude oil without the complicity of the commander-in-chief, who also happened to be the Minister of Petroleum. Between him and his appointees in NNPC, they do the paperwork. Any vessel that will enter Nigerian waters will have to pass through Navy. It's only the commander-in-chief that will ask the Navy to stand down for ocean-going vessels to come and carry crude. So not only were they stealing the crude by signing off and coming to carry it in the dark, undocumented, Buhari actually pre-sold crude 2 years, 3 years. So the production going on now, the crude oil that Shell and Mobil and Ajib are producing today, the monies of it have been collected by the previous administration. And so it's an empty. So Shell will continue to produce, Egypt will continue to produce, Mobil will continue to produce, but somebody who was president of Nigeria had collected money from people who are now to be supplied. And that money was used, you will hear about ways and means, 30 trillion. 30 trillion is the amount we are discussing for ways and means. That is money that the president took out of the treasury with not tied to anything, and we saw what he was doing with it. Building refinery in Niger Republic, building railway into the Niger Republic. Otherwise, let us ask Amechi what he was doing as transport minister. Paying salaries in Niger Republic, buying security vehicle for them. 30 trillion, converted to dollars. And you are asking how poverty came, how hunger came. So your currency is being devalued because of this reckless spending imposed on everybody by the constitution we have tolerated for 25 years. If I were to tell you, Nigerians deserve every calamity befalling them right now for tolerating that constitution for 25 years. We raised this issue within 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks of the imposition of that constitution in 1999. But everybody became deaf and dumb, greedy. Some want to be governor. So that is all about what the problems are. For which reason Ninas is telling everybody, whether you are in Sokoto or you are in Port Harcourt, or you are in Ibadan or Lagos, or Abuja, everything everybody is trying to do to solve these problems without first taking down that constitution, to rework it into something that can serve the citizen, to serve the peoples of Nigeria, is being done in ignorance, is being done in dishonesty, is being done in utter recklessness, is being done in obduracy. That is, obduracy is where you see danger and you think that somehow God will save you alone. Look at the number of churches in Nigeria. Look at the number of people who go to cry. In the time we were going around to try to tell the leaders of the religious leaders, we went to them, called their names. If any one of them says he wasn't told, let us know so that we can bring evidence of how many times we went to tell them. Without exception. We went to tell them that your flock is dying from this constitution. Every time you go to election, you are only going to renew the life of that constitution. They are not interested. And so, none of those church leaders, you can put their names, anyone you know, the very big ones, the mega ones, whether they're in Lagos or they're in Ota or they're in Abeokuta or they're in Abuja, all of them, Port Harcourt, Uyo, wherever, Catholic Church. We went to tell them that this is what is causing the misery amongst your flock. This is what is causing the danger amongst your flock. They are being killed, they are being impoverished, but those church leaders decided to stay with the enemy, mobilizing them for PVC, to go to vote. The winner of every election will govern with this constitution that render you slaves, render you poor, render you vulnerable to be killed. And they know that the young people don't know this. The older people that know are more interested in what they make for themselves. Look at the number of lawyers, senior advocates. When there's election tribunal, you see them in numbers. When there's EFCC matter, you see them in more numbers. Where have they been in this discussion about the constitution that is responsible for the calamities flowing in this land? And so that's about the issues of the protests. You can see how hunger came. You can see how fuel subsidy became a discussion in a country that sells 3 million barrels of crude oil every day. You can see how electricity went away. You can see how all the other infrastructure went away. Look at the roads. Look at the East-West Road. Because it's on the exclusive list. And so that is what the problem is. And there's no solution that can come outside taking down that constitution. But Ninas has done the work that needs to be done. The only thing remaining is for those who live in that misery to put aside all of whatever they were thinking before, listen to what the problem is and what the solution is. It won't take us 90 days from the time they listen to when that problem will have to give way, because they will then adopt demands that go to the basis of the foundation of the problem. From the day they make that demand, nobody can draw power and authority. Section 14(2)(a) of that constitution says sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. I'm giving you the key to your salvation right now. Ninas is handing to you the key to leave the prison of hunger, the prison of insecurity, the prison of hopelessness. That constitution admits that sovereignty belongs to you, the people, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. And therefore, since we, the people, have not made any constitution, everybody now knows that. Where is the government drawing the power and authority by which is holding onto your economic assets everywhere in Nigeria today? By which is pointing guns at you everywhere today? By which is making laws that ruin your life? By which is making policies that ruin your life? The ones that say, oh, we will not sell subsidy. What is your own share of that crude oil that they are selling, for which they cannot pay? It's bad enough that our managers, we have a farm for corn. The farm is full with corn. Our managers are supposed to process what we need from that corn and sell the rest. We don't need more than 10% of the corn of what is to service our needs. These managers confiscate the farm, sell all the corn, and then import custard at whatever price, as if we have no stake in the corn that they sell. We are being forced to buy these petroleum products at international prices converted to naira. Then, when the gap is too much, oil prices go up and then it becomes more costly to buy. It is the cost of that difference is what they now claim to be subsidy. They are the ones buying and selling among themselves the crude and importing, and they're doing a swap of give me crude, all among themselves, paying themselves for their inefficiencies at our own expense. And our currency is now put under pressure. Naira that used to be $4 to 1 naira is now over 1,500, chasing after $1. By the same set of people since 1967. Go and find out who and who had been in charge of doing these things that has happened to all of us. And so we proceed to the question of what we now have to do to get out of this mess. In closing, for what happened with protests, the organizers of the protests, if they had listened to Ninas that was chasing them all over the place, to say, this is what the problem is, so that your demand should be pointed to that constitution. All the other things say that let your demand be that this constitution is responsible for all of what is befalling us, including hunger, including petroleum and the subsidy of it, including insecurity. Or will you go for another protest? Now, if they bring back subsidy, you go to another protest for security, in which people have been beheaded all over the place. Then you go to another protest for electricity. Then you go to another protest for every other thing. See, all these 8 items that make life impossible in Nigeria, that made Nigeria the poverty capital of the world, that that renders production impossible. For those who want to take us from consumption to production. Production how? Production how? Under which constitution? That want to give us good governance. Good governance how? Good governance how? Rule of law how? How? Under this constitution that makes us all those things impossible. You can't have rule of law in a regime of impunity. The constitution itself is founded on impunity and licenses the beneficiaries of impunity in black and white. And then you come to talk about rule of law. You see what has become of the judiciary. Because of what is written in terms of the appointments, in terms of who accounts to who. What Ninas had prescribed was for us to demand the 5-point proposition of Ninas should become the 5-point demand of anybody who wants anything to change in Nigeria. Whether you are being beheaded in the Middle Belt, or your oil and gas have been seized in the Niger Delta, or the ports that should belong to you now belong to other people because of the exclusive list, or the limestone that should belong to Benue people now handed over to Dangote to be Africa's richest man. It is all coming from that, or that the naira that you try to earn is no longer able to buy anything. Everything you want to complain about, or that you can't find petroleum products at prices that can keep you in business. When you buy petrol to run your generator, to compete with people who are bringing from places where there is stable electricity, you can't compete. You are going to fold up. The young people that are running away from Nigeria, what are they running from? Where are they running to? It is this same constitution that charged you out of, whether you are in America or you are in Europe or you are in Asia. It is this constitution that charged you out of what should have been a land of milk and honey, but occupied by demons and principalities, masquerading as government. If you do not get the knowledge you need and act as appropriate to get to that matter, that problem, because the people holding us down are less than 1% of the entire population, less than 1%. The government and all the armed forces put together and all the civil servants put together on their payroll, all of them put together do not come to 1% of the population that is suffering, that have been charged out of their spaces. Shame on the rest of us if that 1% cannot be stopped. And what do we need to stop them? Just to say that we cannot continue with this constitution, that we are now coming to a solution. We have seen the problem. The solution to the problem, you don't need a soothsayer to tell you that it is to take down, to extinguish the source, to extinguish the tap, turn off that tap from which all these evils are flowing. Is anybody still arguing about where the evils are coming from? Except the dumb heads that are saying it is all about leadership. When our party comes, it will do better. All the parties in Nigeria subscribe to that constitution. Should we not be stoning those who subscribe to the criminality of our signature being put on a document we knew nothing about, that has turned our lives into hell? All the political parties in Nigeria, PDP, APC, Labour Party, all the political merchants, anybody who has gone to contest the election under this constitution is a criminal for subscribing to that constitution. But the responsibility for stopping them should come back to we who suffer from that constitution. And therefore, the solution to the problem is to reject that constitution as basis of union. Like the South Africans, the black South Africans rejected the apartheid constitution that excluded them from their land. Otherwise, your sovereignty is taken. And therefore, all your economic assets and all your rights, you don't have a right to anything, including right to life. That's why nobody is brought to account anytime they kill you, including the ones that were killed in this last protest. Under this constitution, you are slaves. If anybody is telling you any other thing, tell him that he's a liar. Under this 1999 constitution, you are slaves. The slave is not entitled to any rights at all. The slaves have no rights. You have no right to your property. That is why the oil and gas in your backyard belong to Mederibe in Maiduguri and other people in Kano and Katsina. The slave does not have right to even his life. And so, for every day you keep this constitution, doing PDP and APC inside it, you are the ones authorizing your own damnation, whether you are killed or you are impoverished. And Ninas is saying, we can terminate the life of that constitution today, because the prerogative, the exclusive prerogative of making constitution is yours, is the peoples of Nigeria. If you doubt me, go to section 14(2)(a). By their own admission, they say sovereignty belongs to the peoples of Nigeria, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. The contention of Ninas is that the falsehood, the three falsehoods in the preamble to that constitution, that we the people, meaning that you who own that exclusive right to make constitution, have solemnly resolved to live in unity forever, as one indivisible and indivisible union. Therefore, hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. And so, those three falsehoods are the reasons you are where you are today, are the reasons you are being killed, are the reasons you are being impoverished, are the reasons you are being shot at, are the reasons your naira is collapsing. It is alleged that you decided to live in this hell under the conditions you see here, because the exclusive list is in that constitution, credited to you. The 36 states are in that constitution, credited to you as the one who authorized it to be so. The 7 local government areas that render you, a voiceless minority between the states and local government areas. In the place of representation in Abuja, you are a voiceless minority on any issue to be decided. In the place of sharing of resources and opportunities, including licenses that have to be given by federal government on those 68 items of exclusive list, you stand no chance at all. They can take the one they already gave you before. Go and ask all of those who tried to do the businesses Dangote eventually got interested in. They were all liquidated out of the space so that he could do the business in monopoly. Why is it so? That constitution, and it is your signature sitting there in that false claim that you solemnly resolve with others, and that you wrote, enacted, and made this constitution for yourself. Why will such falsehood not be challenged and terminated? That is what Ninas have been inviting you to for 25 years. But you stuff your ears and go voting in elections in which all the winners will have to swear to defend and uphold that constitution, will have to govern you by that constitution. All the structures that rendered you the slave you have been remain in place. Somebody who bears a name that looks like your own, like Tinubu that looks like Yoruba, he's president now. But has that translated to any freedom for the slaves in Yoruba land under this constitution? No. They are suffering the hunger. They are suffering the insecurity. They are suffering the hopelessness. The naira is not any stronger in their midst than it is in Port Harcourt. And so, let us know it for sure that every day we allow that constitution to remain in place, it is by our own authorization that we live in the damnation. Especially at a time when there's something on the table, like plug and play. If we listen today and we mobilize all of those people who went to say no, to channel that energy into rejecting the source of the problem. Many of them, including the one in the US, Showore, if he has not anybody who does not denounce further national elections under this constitution, because the reason Ninas put 5-point proposition is to say, item 1, the system must now acknowledge that constitution is the problem, is the source of all the problems in the land, including the agitations everywhere, the hunger everywhere, the insecurity everywhere. If it is our demand that those who are drawing power from that constitution must now acknowledge, that's Nina's proposition number 1. Nina's proposition number 2 is that they must now commit, the government of Nigeria must now commit to decommissioning that constitution, like South Africa got to in 1990, where the government, the apartheid government, committed to decommissioning the apartheid 100%. They first acknowledged that apartheid can no longer be basis of the Union of South Africa. They then committed expressly to decommissioning. On a date in 1990, after 80 years, apartheid was introduced in 1910. It took 80 years of fighting. For those who run their mouth to say, Ninas have been doing what we cannot say for 25 years. It took over 250 years to lock you down from the time the British began to, the colonial people began to come here, to the time they departed in 1960 and handed you over to Ahmadu Bello and his lieutenants, who are still managing you to this date, supervised from London. That's how your life became what it is wherever you are inside Nigeria. That's how your life became what it is wherever you are in your exile, whether it's in the US or in Europe. It is on account of the fact that you were locked down and your economic assets have been taken over and the right to kill you in your space have been acquired by putting your signature on a document you didn't make. And so if in 25 years from 1999, we have come to where that subject matter that was being discussed in hushed tones has taken center stage. And that brings me to having to inform you on all of what has happened between our last meeting in this space and now. You heard when Emeka Anyoko went to tell Tinubu about forming Constituent Assembly that will write new constitution, and then referendum that will follow. Yes, we need to depart from where we are. But in departing, where do we want to go? And how do we want to get there? The recommendation of Emeka Anyoko to Tinubu will not lead us to where we want to go at all. It might lead us into bigger damnation. Because he says, let people be nominated 3 per state to come and write constitution. Exactly what Murtala Mohammed did in 1975 when he toppled Gowon. He set up a committee to draft constitution. Rotimi Williams, that now hired Ben Wabeze from University of Lagos. So they drafted the constitution and then set up Constituent Assembly subsequently. That had to rubber stamp, that had to more or less validate what they already did, and Obasanjo coronated the document in 1979. Removing everything that the Constituent Assembly did in 1977. But the process that is wrong is to start by writing constitution. What Nigeria needs today is fresh constitutional arrangements. There's a difference between drafting of constitution, the constitution drafting, and constitutional arrangements being made. Constitution drafting can be done by one person. Falana can sit in his corner of his house and draft a whole constitution. Abubakar can sit in corner of his house and draft a whole constitution. Just like you have all your town union associations, don't they all have constitutions? So any 2-3 people one person can sit down and draft constitution. But that is not what is an issue in Nigeria. What has happened to Nigeria is that the discussion that should have become union has not taken place between those who are trapped here by the British brigandage of 1914. That is what has to be resolved. Constitution making for a federation like Nigeria will have to be in 3 stages. Anybody who knows where to find Emeka Anyoko and all the co-travel, the Osekome that traveled with him, and all of those that went to make that submission, should tell them that constitution drafting, which is where they want to start, is the 3rd bus stop. The first bus stop, let us take it in sequence from that preamble that tells us what went wrong. The first thing that has to be done, if anybody is still thinking about Nigeria, is you must now identify who we the people are. Who are the ones federating? Whose lands are you aggregating into the Union of Nigeria? you must identify the Yoruba in Yoruba land because they are the ones who own the sovereignty. If Nigeria was not occupying their space, there would be a country of 60 million people today. You must identify the Ijo in Ijo land, the Tiv in Tiv land, the Igbo in Igbo land, the Hausa in Hausa land, the Berom in Berom land, the Nupe in Nupe land, the Igala in Igala land, the Isoko in Isoko land, Urobo in Urobo land, Bini in Bini land. The only people who do not have anywhere they can point to is the Fulani. Does anybody know where Fulani land is in Nigeria? How come Fulani is the one that imposed the constitution that is governing all of us? They are on a conquest mission. If you don't stop them, they are going to they're going to behead you and own the land forever in the name of Nigeria. And your signature is sitting there. The international community think we're in a democracy. They think we are a free people. We are not. They were not saying so. We are pretending we are a free people, that we are living in democracy. We go to election when they invite us. They look at the contents of that constitution by which they will govern. And so, we come down to Emeka Nyoko's prescription and proposition of a constitution drafting. It's like building a house from the roof. It's like rigging the process in order to fix the outcome. How do we mean? The British in 1914 avoided the owners of the sovereignty when they amalgamated everybody without talking to them. The people they signed the treaties with, almost 60, 70 years before, they didn't call them in when they aggregated their lands into the union that became Nigeria. From that time, they had avoided the owners of the sovereignty to this date. In 1960, in 59 Lancaster House meetings, it was the politicians they had groomed that they took to London and then handed over something that was an empty independence to them, because the guns that would have been the protection of the regions were left in the hands of Ahmadu Bello. Go and find out what collapsed the First Republic. It was because the British deliberately left all the guns in the hands of Ahmadu Bello, Northern region, that Ahmadu Bello was able to bundle Awolowo that won the independence election into prison. From there, they suspended the constitution of Western region May 29, 1962. Go and find out. That's how the sovereignty of the Yoruba got lost into the pocket of the Fulani. And then they turned around to the other people, the thief in the middle belt. They began to kill them to take their land. The Yoruba said no. They descended on them in Ibadan. It became Wild Wild West. It was that madness that prompted the revolution of January 15 in 1966, where Nzogbu Ifeanyi, Ademoyega, and others decided to step in to stop the madness and bring Awolowo back from prison where they had dumped him. That's how we got into the mess we are in. And then in July, the military wing of the caliphate, in what they termed a counter coup, a revenge coup, now plunged the entire thing into the mess that we're living in to this date. And then they codified it in 1975. It is that same codification process in which they began by writing the constitution drafting is in the third layer. Identify the owners of the sovereignty, get them in the second bus stop to go to meet and discuss. Bola Ige was shouting from the rooftops that we have to settle two questions. Do we want to continue as one political union? If yes, on what terms? Those are the things that will now become firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity. So they jump the first one. They don't want to deal with, they are dealing with South-South and South-East. They are dealing with Middle, they are dealing with North-Central and North-North. They don't want to deal with the Yoruba owners of Yoruba land, Ijo owners of Ijo land. Why can't we dress back, accept that we have not made a constitution, and then solve those three falsehoods by identifying the owners of the lands that you call Nigeria in all the components, by getting them to discuss among themselves, first to agree to be in union, and therefore the terms of the union. It is in that discussion that they now begin to say, oh, we'll be in 10 formations of regions or 50 states. It is in that discussion that they will decide what the federal government will be doing for everybody. So it will not be 68. It could be 3 things. It could be 10 things. But it will be their decision. It is in that discussion they will decide the accounting processes, who can get to the treasury, who can become governor or president. How do we manage our election? It is in that discussion of wanting to be one political union that they will settle all those things. Emeka Anyokwu and Co., Emeka Anyokwu and the Tinubu that they went to see do not want that to happen. Therefore, they begin by drafting, they select the people they select, they say 3 per state. How did we come to 36 states? In which you are now selecting 3. We are saying we don't know anything about the 36 states. The Ijaw I know, the Isoko I know, the Yoruba I know, the Urobo I know. I don't know what Imo State is, or what Abia State is, or what Southeast geopolitical zone is. Why can't we deal with the owners of the land that we call Nigeria? Identify them for who they are on their father's lands, and get them into a process by which they discuss. We go into transition. And that is, I'm now getting to what we need to do to get to the solution. We must insist that we cannot go to another election. We have gone to 7 elections so far. 1999, 2003, 2011, 2015, 2019, 2023. 6. People are already talking about the 7th one. Under the same constitution that ensure, that guarantee your misery. Are we under a spell not to realize? So as it is, the action we need to take. I was talking about what Emeka Anyokwu went to ask Tinubu to do. That request to go and draft constitution with a representation from 36 states is completely unacceptable to NINAS, is the opposite of what we need to do. They are only trying to preserve what they have. They are trying to preserve the Nigeria that sucks your blood. All of them. Otherwise, why would the people who now want to deal with this constitution not be interested in going to listen to those who found out the problem since 1999 and began to organize the owners of Nigeria for what has to be done, that had gone to everywhere in the world to talk to the institutions that should be informed. They now want to go back to what was done in 1975 by Murtala Mohammed, to draft constitution before they get who, for which country is Emeka Anyokwu and Tinubu going to draft that constitution without inviting the owners of the sovereignty? They want to swindle the owners of the sovereignty for the 3rd time. The British swindled it in 1914. Nigeria swindled from 1960, which they codified in 1979. They want to swindle it the 3rd time that NINAS had defeated the 1999 constitution, and they want to now go and write another one. We are saying that what must happen, except we want to dissolve the stupid union as defined by that constitution, is an option to end the union, because it is that constitution that creates the union. It is that constitution that says you and I have agreed to be in union. If we have never met, are we bound to remain in it forever, dying in it, trekking to Mediterranean, to desert and dying in the Mediterranean Sea and living as slaves, being in exile all over the world? We are not bound to keep it. It is our ignorance that is sustaining them. If we pull back from that ignorance, they won't survive another month. If we say in unison that we can continue under this constitution, and the way we can say it is to reject further national elections under it as a matter of immediate, and to even reject the people in government house now must show us the source of the power and authority they're exercising. And I use that word authority in limited sense. They have power. Did you authorize them on election day? Because it is by election that you authorize the people that will come to exercise power for 4 years. On the 25th of February in 2023, Nigerians certainly did not authorize this set of people who are now pointing guns at everybody and stealing the country blind. But the owners of the assets, They owe it a responsibility to themselves to take responsibility for their own lives, to take charge by getting to know what they didn't know before and acting to save themselves, to salvage themselves, to save their lands from people who are determined to take it for themselves and kill them off. That's what's going on. And so that proposition of going to write constitution before the owners of the land discuss. Nina then says in item 4 of our propositions, item 1 we already know. Acknowledgement that this is the problem that has to be solved. Item 2, the commitment to solve the problem. Item 3, the commitment to suspend further national elections. It must become our demand that we cannot go to another election under this constitution. If we are not making that demand, then we want to perish. If we are not making that demand, then we are dishonest. If we are not making that demand, we are ignorant to the extent that kills. That you reject this constitution and you are preparing to go to another election under it. What has been the outcome of all the elections that have happened since they imposed that constitution? Look at their own lives. It's been growing in leaps and bounds. Billions and trillions being shared. Look at your own lives. It's been shrinking and shrinking to the point where you can no longer feed. But you are the one sustaining it. It's you going to renew the life of that constitution that keeps them there. So we say, item 3, let us say we cannot go to another election under this constitution, meaning that they have to suspend the talk of going to election in 2027 under that constitution. And what do we have in place of election? A transition. It must now become our demand that in rejection of that constitution, since the winner will have to govern by it and our life will continue to be ruined, we reject that constitution. We insist in place of election on a transition now. Those in government house, we are not anarchists. We are saying that those in government house can remain like South Africa did in 1990. The government of Frederick de Klerk remained, the parliament remained, but there was Codesa. The owners of the sovereignty went into another room to discuss the terms of their union, to be in union. And for those who may not know, the Codesa in South Africa that lasted 5 years, the first 2 years was whether they want to be in one union. The ultra-conservative whites say they cannot be in one political union with the blacks who may become president. It took them 2 years of discussing that before they came to where they couldn't find where to draw the line to say, okay, we divide the country. No, because the white people spread themselves all over the place. Nobody wanted to move from his own part so that they can have a white country and a black country. So they now settled for rainbow. The balance of the 3 years was in discussion. That is what Nigeria needs to do as urgently as it can be mustered. Every day they refuse to do it. They are bringing the danger closer home, exponentially, more likely to be so that this place will go up in smoke. Because those who are being tormented in this union of death under this falsehood of that constitution are not going to fold their arms and die to the last man. The remedy available to them is called self-determination. The basis of self-determination is their sovereignty. As long as it is Yoruba people occupying Yoruba land, their sovereignty belongs to them. Every other authority, every other thing imposed on them is a sovereignty, just like the British. The federal government of Nigeria of today is exactly like the sovereignty of the British that suppressed our sovereignty. Sovereignty never leaves you. It can be suppressed for a while. As long as you are on your land and you are not being conquered in that land. So Yoruba is in Yoruba land. Ijo is in Ijo land. Igbo is in Igbo land. Tiv is in Tiv land. They've not been dislodged by anybody else. And so sovereignty belongs to them. And it is the aggregation of their sovereignty that you call Nigeria. So if all of them say today that on account of rejecting the constitution that conscript their sovereignty, that hijack their sovereignty, that they will not go to another election, who will sit in Abuja and say it cannot be so? Who will sit in Abuja and say it cannot be so? Or any of the state capitals? Because all the institutions, the federal government, the president, the army, the judiciary, all of them are creations of that constitution. And so if the ones who has exclusive prerogative to make constitution are saying we have not made any and therefore we must go to transition now or we dissolve the union. If we cannot go to resolve Nigeria as in discussion by the owners of the sovereignty, not the nominees of Emeka Anyokwu and Tinubu from 3 members per state. How did we come about this? We are saying we don't know how we came about the states. because everything anchored on that falsehood is bound to fail us, is bound to work against our interests. Let us sit down and discuss to know in the formations we want to live, if we are going to retain one political union, membership of one political union. And so, Ninas rejects that terrible proposition because it is a rigged process that will preserve the Nigeria of master and servant. The people who do not understand may think that they are solving the problem. Oh, they say constitution. Now Emeka Anyaoku is leading. They are going to write another constitution. No, it has to be in 2 stages. In the first stage, those who will be federating have to identify themselves and make their draft constitution by which they could be country of their own. It is in the second layer that they will now go to the meeting, having settled what their minimum conditions for remaining in the union. It is in that second layer that they will now go to discuss how to be in union with the other people. Thereafter, you will now come to the question of constitution drafting. So it is constitution making. Constitution making takes all these stages, all these processes to come to where you now have agreed. That's when you call the draftsmen. That's where you call the experts that can write down that agreement that may take 1 year or 2 years to arrive at. But it starts with the constitution of Yoruba land, the constitution of the other people in whatever formation they agree among themselves. Isoko and Urobo can sit down. Ijo and Anang and Efi can sit down in another. Igbo can sit down with whoever. They will have to generate the constitutions by which they will then federate. A federation is a union of constitutions, a union of sovereignties. Our sovereignties have been hijacked. That's why we have one constitution. And somebody who has been a diplomat all his life goes to the capital, Abuja, and is telling the whole world that Nigeria will now have to write one people's constitution for a federation. We are not prepared to accept that Emeka Anyaoku is ignorant on that point. He knows exactly what he's doing. And we're not going to accept it with his host, Tinubu. The owners of the sovereignty must be the ones to commit to being in union. If they think that Nigeria is settled forever, like Ibrahim Babangida used to tell us, that is a settled matter. It's a settled issue. Anybody who raises the question of union, that he will wear his uniform and go back to the battlefield. That was what that was the last thing Ibrahim Babangida said. Unfortunately, that today is his birthday. I'm sure there are people in Mina who are listening to this discussion. The last thing Ibrahim Babangida said on this subject is that if anybody raises this issue we're raising, that he will wear his uniform and go back to the battlefield, because he said they settled these issues in the battlefield of Biafra. Unfortunately, the issue has not gone away. It's not about to go away. The only thing that will go away is that Nigeria defined by this constitution. The unitary Nigeria will die so that the people who are trapped in it can live. Your salvation is in putting that constitution to death. If on one hand you are complaining and dying, and on the other hand you are preparing to go to renew the life of that constitution in another election, then you truly deserve to die. You truly deserve to be impoverished even worse than it is now. God has given you salvation, and you choose to grope around in the forest. Whatever happens to you in that forest is your doing. How else are we to say it? How else are we to do it? We've gone everywhere we need to go. We've done everything we need to do. If the people in that prison compound are not prepared to come out, the prison gate is wide open now. Talking about the things that have happened. Tinubu then says that he is not yet thinking about constitution now, that he wants to solve the economy first. Like you have listened to, like you've heard before, everything happening to the economy now, the reason the economy is upside down is the constitution. What the economy is Tinubu building on a constitution that renders all factors of production impossible. So there's no economy. Every single thing that has gone wrong with the economy Even from this meeting of today, you've heard it. Every single thing that has gone wrong with the economy, we are financing an unsustainable 812 government. No money left to attend to the citizen. We are running with 68 items of exclusive list that render every production impossible. So which economy is Tinubu building that he wants to finish building before he comes back to addressing the constitution that rendered that economy prostrate? So there is ignorance, there's also dishonesty. I am not prepared to believe that the Tinubu that came from NADECO, that was very much a part of facilitation of Pronaco at the time he was governor. He came from NADECO to become governor. As governor, he was very much involved. And I'm not telling you what somebody else told me. I'm telling you what transpired eyeball to eyeball between all of us. Fashola was his chief of staff. Enohoro was the one, they were the points man. I'm not prepared to believe that Bola Tinubu no longer understands what we are discussing now, because that was exactly what we went to do in Pronaco, to say the peoples of Nigeria, whose sovereignty have been corralled into the Constitution of 1999, discussing for how and whether they want to continue in union and on what terms. And for 2 years, we were at it. Obasanjo took up a fight with him, seized council allocation. So at what point did Bola Tinubu now become one who has to be explained to? Because we hear some people say, oh, have you gone to tell him? But there was something we did in 2020 in black and white. We placed a plan before the entire country addressed to the federal government of Nigeria, and we put it in print. It was in Guardian newspaper in 4 pages. Guardian of 20th January in 2021. 90 days to the federal government of Nigeria. Can we go to discuss this issue before it becomes a big problem? And so, both the proposition of Emeka Anyoko and the answer that Tinubu gave, totally wrong. Totally unwilling to address any part of the problem we are talking about. And the owners of the sovereignty are not bound to go to Abuja to begin to beg people. The owners of the lands that they call Nigeria will be at liberty to exercise their sovereignty, to exercise their self-determination. Because you cannot continue to ruin their lives with a document that is a forgery. You put their signature on a document they knew nothing about, and you sit in Abuja sharing their blood in trillions of naira and billions of dollars amongst yourselves. It's not going to stand. And so we saw again some of the things that are happening. I'm sure some of us saw the podcast that went viral, in which some Hausa people were saying no to Arewa. That is, there's no Arewa anywhere. Those are the things that are showing us that we are making progress. There's also the one in which one Baba Yusuf was on Channels TV telling everybody that we can't continue to build on a false foundation. That this constitution is like a building with a damaged foundation. Nigeria, you are building on this constitution, is a building with damaged foundation. It will collapse and kill many people. And Ninas is saying, we must stop work now. We must reverse from where we've been and go and sit down to work out what will be the union. And so, as we leave this meeting today, what we're inviting you to is something you can do by yourself to terminate the life of that constitution. Reject very loudly, as loud as I've been sounding in this meeting. Everybody who is rejecting what Nigeria is doing to him, whether he lives in Nigeria or he lives in America, must join in saying we can't proceed any further inch to another election under this constitution. We must reject the political parties that are dragging us to election. Tell them that under which constitution are you going to provide these goodies of life? Under which constitution are you going to govern? If you win, will it address that preamble? that says we the people submitted our sovereignty to you? Will it address the 36 states? Will it address the 68 items of exclusive list if any of the parties win, not the APC that has ruined the whole place, or the PDP that did so before them, or the Labour Party whose candidate says that constitution is not the problem? Can we see the depth, the gravity of the offense Peter Obi committed in saying that the constitution is not the problem? Listening even from this meeting alone. Because those things are there to be verified. He may not be a lawyer, but there are all kinds of people parading around him who are lawyers. If they can't explain to him, does he not owe himself the duty of coming to learn? Because it has been explained to him before. He came public saying that the Nigeria is like a vehicle with knocked engine. Where did he find the engine to load obedient movement people into? To come and provide leadership in a criminal enterprise? Then they voted for him. Why is he not in government house today? That same constitution. And so, what to take away from this meeting is that the solution is in our hands. To reject that constitution and demonstrate that rejection by our rejection of further national election. To insist on transition right now. All the other things we are clamoring for. If we insist and adopt that 5-point proposition of Ninas as our 5-point demand from this government, I tell you, in a matter of days, they will make that kind of announcement of U-turn that South Africa made for apartheid constitution in 1990. If they do so, all the other things about subsidy and the hunger, then Ninas will stand on what we have all agreed to make the demands that can solve the other problems in a matter of days. It won't be 1 week. There's no reason we will not compel our managers to suspend some capital projects. Dave Umahi is pointing at the highway he will build to Shanghai. For people who are dying of hunger, you sit in Abuja and you are building things that will not be finished in 5-10 years. Who are you building it for? So we can insist the sovereignty belongs to us. The government is our servant for the purpose of what we are discussing. We can't be in hunger and our managers are building a stadium for Olympics that may happen in 2040. That's the kind of thing they prefer to do with all the money they gather in Abuja. So we can insist on what they have to suspend right now. We can insist that the humongous sums they take for themselves every month, pending when we prune down from 812 government to something. So in closing, let us calmly absorb the information we now have about how we got to where we are as a country, now the poverty capital of the world. That constitution is responsible for every single thing. And how we're going to come out of it, the Nina's 5-point proposition, if we adopt it as our demand today, because unless somebody is able to show us another reason why Nigeria is upside down, it is that constitution. Unless somebody is able to suggest to us another means of solving the problem than decommissioning. Unless somebody is able to tell us that we need to go to another election before we come back to solve after 27. Unless somebody is able to tell us and convince us how the government will be the one to write the constitution other than the people who are federated. And unless somebody is able to tell us that we don't need to put any time frame to it. That's our item 5, time-bound announcement. If that announcement is made today, half of the problems will immediately disappear by themselves, because all the big companies that left Nigeria will immediately begin to rush back to Nigeria if that announcement is made today. And if our demand is that a commitment to solve the problem by way of that announcement, if that is all our demand, why would they delay in making that commitment? Because it is pinned down to something they cannot debate. And is the government in Abuja going to tell us that constitution is not the problem when they are trying to smuggle the one they are writing by the corner? whether it's from Fagbonda or from Anyoko or from Abakoba, they themselves are by their actions, or National Assembly of Benjamin Kanu, by their actions they have admitted that the constitution is dead and they're trying to smuggle another one. We say no. So are they going to tell us they don't want to solve the problem yet? Or that it's at their own time that they will do it? No, because people are already dying. If our people will listen to us and we make that demand, the matter of fuel subsidy, nobody will tell them to, because once they commit to solving the problem, then we don't need to discuss the matter of subsidy with them, because the crude oil belongs to the owners. At worst, it belongs to the country, not to the government of the day that will then go and sell it and begin to fritter the money as they are frittering. If we get them to where they make that announcement that South Africa made in 1990, we will dictate what they will do with the resources available. So people cannot be dying and you are building all these kind of stupid capital projects that don't add anything to their life for a problem you created by your wrong economic policies. The so-called withdrawal of fuel subsidy that was just done for the fun of the moment. On a day you are being sworn in, you make such a policy pronouncement, and then in less than 24 hours, the whole place was upside down. Then you float the naira that has no production base behind it. You float it in the international circuit where currencies with production bases are flying. Then naira collapse. Between the two and the insecurity that nobody wanted to address, because they didn't want to talk about the Fulani conquest agenda that became the insecurity. Why don't we have the courage to call these problems by their names and demand the termination of that constitution and all of what is anchored on it? That is what we need to do now, and NINAS has a clear step-by-step mechanism by which it can be done. And the moment we begin to do it, I can tell you authoritatively that the matter of subsidy, will redo it by ourselves to know how much we're going to allow for our servants, the government, to put in what. And then the question of hunger. By the time we pull back, we suspend certain useless capital projects, the money will become food in a matter of weeks for everybody. Not this one bag of rice they throw at communities. I'm talking about real food that will now stabilize things to where production will resume. Because again, the question of security will have been solved if that announcement is made, because people are going to take charge immediately for what their security will be in their spaces. And then the immediate reduction by no less than half of the current allowances of this humongous governance structure we have, the officials. We can insist on 25%. A man who is taking 60 million every month, like we have computed, why won't he take 15 million in the period of transition, so that we recover 3/4 of what they are spending to run themselves? That alone can fix the question of hunger immediately, can begin to address some of the many other problems immediately. We only need to insist that we can proceed with that constitution, meaning that they can no longer draw power from that constitution or authority if they pretend they won election. We are not interested in who won, because it's like several robbery gangs fighting over what they stole from us. For the quarrel between PDP and APC and Labour Party about who won election. That's how it sounds to us. We're not interested in it. Every one of them subscribe to that constitution. That's where our interests end. We don't prefer any one of them to the other. Let those who are still planning to come tomorrow under that constitution be told in advance that they are guilty of the other people in sustaining that constitution, and therefore we do not prefer them to come and to be the one to ruin our lives. It's like saying this one better, I prefer this one to rape me than the other. Why can't we stop the rape? Thank you for listening. I yield the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Nadi. That was an exceptional presentation. Your ability to engage and educate us is impressive. The floor is now open for questions and comments. Please keep your comments or question concise and relevant to the topic of the day, and also maintain a respectful tone. To ask your question or make your comments, please raise your hand by clicking on the heart icon located at the right hand bottom corner of your phone. Then select the raise hand icon or option. Mr. Kani, please accept the invite, and you have the floor. And Mr. Moses, please, Mr. Kani, ask your question, please.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for